Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here. I am coming at you with a little bit more of an impromptu cast today, as I thought maybe what I might start doing is doing some more sort of little short reviews on things that I'm interested in or things that have caught my eye that nobody really wants to listen to. So here's one of them. This is a game which is called The Avengers, which is based on the Marvel franchise, of which there have been many movies based on all these characters over the last sort of 10-12 years. There's a game coming out which has been developed by Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, and it's published by Square Enix, and I just thought I'd take a look at it today. So I'm kind of coming at it from a more of a sort of design point of view, just in terms of gameplay and the character styles, etc. As you can see, we're in the menu of the game here. This is the beta which just launched today. In this you can play as a whole load of different characters, and as you can see you can try on all the legendary outfits, etc, etc. So it looks like this game is probably going to have a whole load of microtransactions within it. So once you've paid your kind of £50 or £60, or I think maybe the prime sort of top tier level is about 85 quid, you can then spend loads more extra money on all these other characters. So that's always good to know. So we're back in the menu here, and basically this looks like one of the character models of Black Widow, which, you know, again, I think all this stuff should really be free in the game, but if you're really into it that much, then I guess you're gonna go through and spend your parents' hard-earned cash. So basically you've got your main Avengers there, and none of them have, obviously they don't have the rights for any of the movie characters, so Chris Hemsworth and all those dudes are not in it, which I kind of find a little bit jarring, to be completely honest, because, you know, it wasn't that long ago that these films came out, and now they've released a game based on this franchise, and all of them look like the kind of the Pepsi to the Cokes, you know, they all look a little bit like the kind of cheaper versions, but you know, you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess, because they can't run around having Robert Downey Jr. and everything. He obviously costs quite a lot of money, whereas you know, Guy drives the bus, he doesn't cost anything, so there he is as Captain America. So so this is the opening of the game. Obviously it's all very cutscene heavy, as this is the beta launch. There he is, the bus driver, and there's the you know, all the usual tropes that tie back to the movies, with Iron Man sort of landing in front of a big crowd, etc. Oh no, there's a crisis, quick. So this is the opening mission, where you're basically flying off to save San Francisco Bridge, by the looks of it. Now, none of this is gameplay yet, it's all cutscenes. So you know, I think the idea being that the opening mission, you get to try out everybody in their different play styles. I actually think some of the graphics in this look a little bit last generation, so it all feels a bit PS3 rather than PS4 and Xbox One. But here we go. So we've got Thor battling some dudes here, and there's your usual tutorials coming up. I tend to find these games a little bit boring now. Like, ever since the Batman Arkham series, which was excellent, there hasn't been any other games that have really quite nailed that group fighting style. You know, it doesn't quite feel the satisfactory. So when I was playing, this is my gameplay, by the way. So when I was playing this, I did feel that also the characters felt quite floaty. So I thought, even though it all looks sort of relatively nice and in keeping with itself and the surrounding, doesn't look too bad, although that character model is a bit rubbish. The actual gameplay itself, I kind of didn't really feel connected to the world. Everything was a little bit kind of button prompts, to be honest with you, whereas coming off the back of like games like Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us 2, they feel much more realistic and interactive in a way that feels more natural, whereas this feels very computer game. So here you are fighting generic bad guys, which I just think, like a massive god with a hammer, hitting people in the face. I think probably just feels a little bit like he might possibly kill them. I mean, I don't know. That's the problem I had with the films as well, is that they kind of lightly gloss over the fact that actually they're just murdering people in all of these buildings that are being destroyed and ships that are being blown up. I think that's why, ultimately the real bad guys end up being like robots, because nobody cares about robots. So as you can see, they've spent a fair amount of time on the background rendering and the design of all of that. I think the main designers on this was two people one called Magali Stretton and another one called Alicia Thayer, both of who obviously have been involved in the design process from the start, as they are named designers, despite the fact that there's probably about another 200 odd designers that have just gone through and worked on everything else, from like the way the grass, what the grass looks like, old Thor's chest plates, etc., etc. The identity and everything for this just feels a little bit like a kind of poor man's Marvel movie. I don't really feel like they've pushed it further than that, to be honest. So I think the gameplay of this, though, is basically they're trying to copy, I don't know if you're a gamer or not, but there's a game called Destiny, which is a massive MMO online, big multiplayer online, where basically they just keep the audience kind of hooked in after the single player escapades, to get people to come back and to continue playing that game and to build a community, but also to get them to buy more stuff. So it's not like you release one game and then you're done. Nowadays games tend to come out with the idea that they are going to have a much longer shelf life, and potentially make much more money than just the kind of the on the door price of entry. So I think that's the basis of what this game is going to be, which is going to be, they want you to play the single player and have a good time. There's a whole section to this game which is called the War Room, where they're going to have different dynamic events happening, where you can change the look of your character, you can interact with other people online, so one of you could be Thor, another person could be the Incredible Hulk, all that kind of stuff, which I think is quite a good idea. But I'm getting a little bit sick of these style of games, to be honest with you, because there's so many of them trying to do the same thing. They all want to kind of jump aboard the gravy train, that kind of the cash cow of, you buy it once and then you keep coming back for more. And I don't know, I also feel like the Avengers feels like an event that happened, with Infinity War and Endgame being the sort of wrap up of all of those Marvel films. It feels like they need to sort of take a bit of a rest from all of this. And to be honest with you, this bit was terrible, by the way. I was trying to play as Iron Man. It's floaty as hell, so it doesn't really work. Also, I was deliberately trying to crash him into the ground, because I always like to sort of test the boundaries of these things a little bit, and that just didn't happen. So basically this is a non-fail state. You can't die in this section, really. I'm sure if you got hit by enough missiles you would, but it's virtually impossible. And I also selected it on hard because I like it to be a little bit more challenging, and it wasn't that challenging, so I found it a little bit not very satisfying, to be honest with you, even though it looks cool. But then this is the opening mission, so of course it's going to look it's going to look as good as it can. Everyone's going to play this first part, especially on the beta, and everyone can write reviews about it and rave about how brilliant it is. But I suspect by about the 5th or 6th mission, there's going to be a lot more ropiness going on in the game, because by that point they've got you. And this was probably the worst part of the whole demo, really, because the lock-on and everything didn't really work very well. I'm never really sort of a big fan of these these sort of hover and shoot games. They're all, as you can see, I'm a terrible shot. It just didn't feel very good. Whereas, even though Thor was a bit floaty on the ground, at least you felt a little bit more connected. So this, and plus, like I said, I've never really been a big Avengers fan. I'm a huge comic book fan and have been for years and years, but I would much rather, it would be like a really cool X-Men game or something. I always thought the Avengers were a a bit pants really, but it's too late for that because obviously the rest of the world thinks they're amazing. So here we are. Now, yeah. So as you can see, basically, I just tried to switch to being in kind of like more of a melee combat on the ground, which isn't that great when you're supposed to be this flying iron dude. So yeah, so here's some more generic enemies. They don't really explain what's happening here other than there's a big fight happening on the bridge. Yeah, so I kind of, the gameplay starts getting a little bit boring from here. This early on in a demo or a beta like this, you'd expect it to be a little bit more exciting, So it looks spectacular for anyone that's watching alongside. They're like, wow, it's like Iron Man doing all this really cool stuff and like Black Widow flipping around the place and that. But actually, when you're playing it, it feels that such a bad shot. It just feels really. Except for that bit was easy. It just feels. It doesn't quite connect to like things that take me into the experience. It's like a good film. Actually, I liken it to those 4DX movies because like I love movies, obviously, like all nerds do. And I get very engrossed and attached to what I'm watching. But if I go and watch like a 4DX film, suddenly like the wind blowing in my hair or like the seat moving just takes me instantly out of the experience. And I feel that feels the same with this part where it's just a bit like it's meant to be all kind of very seamless and natural, and actually the gameplay mechanic doesn't really allow you to lock on in a way that makes it feel more satisfying. And obviously this is interspersed with the cut scenes which you have no control over. And again, I mean, I think that's fine for like 10 years ago because that's what you expected. But now I just feel that, especially with The Last of Us 2, I mean, it's seamless how the cutscenes go into gameplay. The control never really feels like it's taken away from you, whereas with this, you're kind of in the heat of the action, and then it sucks you right out to tell you a little bit about the story that kind of doesn't matter, because at this point you should know more about the story, but the truth is it doesn't really engage you from the off. So you've got Bruce Banner here jumping out of a helicopter and turning into the Bulk, I think he's called, is he? The inedible Bulk? Yeah, see, look, and they ripped that straight from the movies. That's obviously the Hulk Roar from Avengers where he does that, and they've just completely ripped that off, which is why it feels so disconnected, because there's a link to that franchise, to the film franchise, and they can get away with it with the CGI monster because it doesn't really look like Mark Ruffalo, but I just feel like they could have done something a bit more original with the art style, so maybe it should have been like cell shaded or something along those lines would have made it a little bit more unique. But again, so here I am playing as the Hulk, traditional dodge the missile section, which is always the dodging this, the Hulk dodging things doesn't really seem in character. Also, like, there's a bit in the moment where I'm just hitting people in the face, and you can't help thinking that he just kind of turned them into mashed potato if it was kind of trying to be that good. But look, the jumping off the walls thing was garbage as well. That's all kind of pre-scripted, so it's not like you have any control over that section. This is all meant to look like it's open and free, but actually you're just on a path, And I know it's still the tutorial. So I don't really want to give it too much of a hard time for this bit, but I have a feeling that I wouldn't have survived that bit. I don't want to give it too much of a hard time because I know it's just teaching you the controls, which I think initially are garbage, to be honest with you. I'm sure when you've played it for 20 hours they'll be second nature, but they don't feel, like with the Arkham series again, you within the first couple of minutes of playing that, everything felt really natural and smooth and choreographed, whereas this all just feels a little bit that they haven't spent enough time designing the mechanics of how that works. They want you to do cool stuff like throw rocks and smash through things, but the fundamentals of how you connect to other people and your interactions with some of the environment, because you can pick up some things but not all things. I just think, like, go one way or the other. Great, you can pick up a rock, but if I then in the middle of a fight want to go and pick up another rock and can't, I feel like that lets the game down. So just don't do it. It's not necessary. So this you know, that looked pretty good. You know, that was a little bit of scripted gameplay that went into, you know, like a scene which took the control away from you again, but still felt a little bit more sort of cinematic. And again, I think this demo has been showed a few times at various events like E3 and PAX. You know, when there wasn't a global pandemic on, but you know, even so, playing it, I didn't really feel like it connected. You know, like I said before. But all these set pieces look amazing. Now, like I said, I guarantee the rest of the game won't be like this. Maybe the last mission or the last couple, but I guarantee that most of it will just be, you know, walk, find stuff, fight, pick up a mission, etc. Rinse and repeat. There's that roar again, same animation. So you've done old Tony. Never really liked Iron Man. Thor, you know, gets his muscles for free. Doesn't really work out because he's meant to be a god. Same with the Hulk. He gets his muscles for free, so he's ripped because he turns green. The old gamma radiation. So here we go, Captain America, aka my old school bus driver. I think he's going to make an appearance in a minute. And you've got Hulk doing a bit of saving. And Black Widow looks a bit like a kind of substitute teacher. So they haven't quite, you know, even they could have gone total cell shading with the comic book style. It would have been much more appropriate. I think like trying to make everything too realistic and then having them do this crazy stuff where there's, you know, they're flashing red and then there's buttons and prompts above them and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't feel realistic enough. I think you've got to go left or right. You've got to embrace that fully in the design style, or you've got to ignore it fully and do something cooler. So until like all the flashes come up, this looks like quite a realistic fighter. But then, you know, then you've got the energy bars above the people's heads and things like that. And I know that there's probably going to be something in the options that will allow you to toggle that on and off. The design of that is something they will definitely have considered because it's quite a big complaint in a lot of games. But I just feel like as the default, just get rid of it. Again, it takes you out of the experience really. As soon as you know, it doesn't feel like you're part of it. It feels like you are, you know, playing generic computer game, which I just think is unnecessary. But then I'm a bit of a snob, so when it comes to all that stuff, I've played enough of these. I'm sick of seeing them, to be honest with you. So yeah, so I think this is it. So this is probably, Captain America was probably the best out of all of them, to be honest, to play, because he you know, and the truth out of, you know, the whole group of them is like they've all got like godlike powers and, you know, special armor and stuff, and he's ultimately just a dude running around with a shield on. So, you know, I think that's probably why the realistic side of it's going to be, you know, with him is probably going to be one of the better people to play as. Although he clearly killed that dude with his shield just there. So, you know, there is always that, which is like, no, we're just knocking them out. Look, they're rolling around. And then he just like cuts his head off with a shield. And you think, well, is he really, you know, the ambassador for America? You know, who knows? So yeah, a bit more fighting, as you can see. And the combat mechanics are quite good. You know, it's the obvious kind of square for medium attacks. And then you've got triangle for the harder attacks, and then, you know, circle to flip over the heads and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's sort of standard really. They haven't done anything overly exciting with that, but then it's a tried and tested formula that works again and again, you know. So here we are, a bit more of a cutscene, some more dudes. So this generally escalates, you know, as they all do. So you start off with the grunts, and then it gets a little bit more interesting where these guys have got their kind of electronic fists. And that's a one-hit kill, so they're all done. And now you've got to get off this ship, which, you know, obviously, well, when you finish taking these dudes out, obviously it took me too long to sort these guys out. But, you know, everything's on fire. It all looks quite good. A lot of camera shake. I've got a feeling that when there's kind of 5 or 6 dudes all attacking you, it's going to be a total mess. You know, because the lock-on isn't that great. Like I said, it doesn't feel as natural as some of its predecessors. You know, even games that came out like 10 years ago have combat system felt a little bit more fluid. And then you've got these kind of, you know, winning scenarios where he does one move and takes them out, and then a quick cutscene. Bus driver's looking pretty tired now. Yep. He's going to have a look. Oh no, it's all sliding off. The parking lot's out of it, so we best get on our way. So yeah, and then I guess there's a bit more CGI. Now this girl, I think, is going to become one of the main characters, or I think you might actually play as her in the game, because whether you're going to get to play as everyone else in the actual game is going to be interesting. But I think the main protagonist is this young girl who is ultimately trying to put the Avengers back together, I believe, because I think after this, after them basically trashing everything, they get into trouble, and then they split up, and then I think that you become that girl who is ultimately trying to get them all back together. Now this guy, I think his name is Taskmaster, so he's the big bad dude in this one. I think that's right. I think it's Taskmaster, and he, Taskmaster. Can't say that quickly. He is like a traditional Marvel character. He's popped up loads of times. They never really have the big dudes, They never really have. I mean, in the Spider-Man game they did. Spider-Man's a bit different, I think. With these sort of games, they don't generally have the really big enemies, because I guess they're saving them for the movies. You don't want to have, like, if this had come out before the movies and Thanos was the big bad guy, it's very unlikely that he would have been the bad guy in the last sort of 20-odd Marvel films. And this is also a pet hate of mine. So you've gone from some quite interesting fighting gameplay, and now it's ultimately a series of button prompts. And it's a non-fail state, which basically means that you can't die in these bits. You just have to ride them through. Or if they're it's very, very hard for you to fail these bits, even on the harder settings. And it's also not very interesting. There's all this stuff going on, and you feel so disconnected by just sort of pressing whatever button prompt comes up, so you can ultimately just punch this dude in the face. Look, it does look really odd. Substitute school teacher fighting a skeleton. So then we're going to go into a fighting sequence. You see, Black Widow's quite cool, like, as a character. Again, I liked her in the films because, again, they're all kind of super-powered, godlike heroes, or they've all learnt their powers somehow. And ultimately, she's just like an assassin. So that's why you get guns, because who wants to kill anyone in the Marvel universe? Apparently not. But then give her 2 handguns, and yeah, I'm sure she definitely won't kill anyone because she's like a Russian assassin. But anyway, this bit goes on for ages, so I might actually cut this bit out here, or wrap this up. But ultimately, I think the game, I'm interested to see where it's going to go. The beta didn't impress me that much, to be honest with you. I kind of feel that they could have done something really awesome with it, and instead they've gone for kind of generic cookie cutter kind of approach, which I think is a bit of a shame, because despite the fact I'm not a huge fan, which probably is one of the reasons I'm slightly sort of not that mad about it, I do think there are enough people that love it. I was always a sort of Spider-Man fan, to be honest with you, and the Avengers never really interested me that much, although I like the Hulk, but the rest were just a bit whatever. And I think that maybe hopefully the game will sort of raise its game to when for the actual campaign, and then the subsequent kind of stories that you're going to be able to play through with the the online stuff. But to be honest with you, I've got a feeling that it's probably not quite going to be as successful as they want it to be. And I think also bringing something out like this, while it feels like a good idea, they're just absolutely from a branding point of view, they're absolutely saturating the market with this Marvel franchise, to the point where, like 10, 15 years ago, nobody cared who Black Widow was, or nobody knew who she was, and maybe knew about Captain America if you were a bit of a nerd like me, but, you wouldn't necessarily have knew his backstory and stuff. And now everybody knows the backstory, because there's a new Marvel film coming out every 2 or 3 months, and now they're going to bring this this MMO out, where all these multiplayer online kind of aspects of it is just going to drag it out even further and further, and then they'll release new films, etc. I mean, I'm just wondering at what point because it has to change. the saturation of comic book movies in the cinema is just it's unbearable. And I love comic books, and I love all these characters, and I do think they've done a good job with it, but they need to take a break. Like, just go away for 5 years. Don't bring any of this stuff out. Just do Funko Pops and comic books and, and all that stuff. Just, because the more that all of this stuff is in the public eye and becomes so, in your face all the time, it just, I don't know, I feel like it kind of dilutes what's good about it. It dilutes what's cool about it. It's not that cool anymore. It's not like, for fan service maybe, and for like little kids, definitely. If I was like sort of 7 or 8 and all this stuff is coming out now, I'd be absolutely loving it. But I just feel that, like, everybody wants to hear what a 43-year-old designer's got to say. So, from that point of view, I just feel like, I represent the general public, I guess, and I just feel like it's just too much. I just feel like they've overcooked it all a little bit. So yeah, just kind of cool it off for a bit, but it doesn't look like it's going that way. So let's see how it goes. So I think maybe that might be about it for my commentary, my amazing scripted commentary on the Avengers beta. So yeah, like, subscribe if you've listened this far. I'm guessing maybe not. Probably just talking to myself in a room now. But yeah, I thought maybe I'll stick this up and see if we get any interest in that. And yeah, I think this whole sort of game changer things, it's going to be about games, but I think it's also going to be about other things, because there's a few kind of graphic novels I want to talk about. And I don't want to make like a massive long movie about them every time, because like that's quite time consuming, and have to do research and have to find all the images and do the intros and outros, and it's awesome fun doing all of that. But I'm not always, work commitments are going to get in the way of that occasionally. So I want to make sure I can still put some content out, and yeah, I think maybe putting out some kind of commentary on various nerd culture might be the way to go for in the kind of sort of foreseeable future. So a little bit of this. It doesn't mean the other stuff stopped by any means, but I figure it's there's lots of stuff to talk about at the moment. The gaming industry is the largest entertainment platform on earth of all time ever. It beats Hollywood, it beats any other books and magazines, films, theatre. It's just the largest entertainment entity that's ever existed. So it's interesting to see what the tip of the spear of that kind of brand. There's that animation again. The tip of the spear of what where that branding's going to take these games, and where the creativity and the design side of things is constantly getting better and better. And I want to look at games that do that better and better. I'm not sure this is one of them. It's certainly going to be one of the largest, sort of most popular ones, I'm sure. Reach the most people. I'm sure it'll do very well. Not sure it's for me. And also I always hated when people do the kind of scores out of 10 for things, because like I always feel like it's all subjective and you can't compare one thing to another, etc., etc. But since I've started doing thinking about these sort of little reviews and things like that, I actually think I'm going to have to do that, because I have to have some way to compare it to another game or of a similar ilk. And I think 10's obviously going to be like, it's going to be an absolute masterpiece. This, I am going to be mean and give it a 4 out of 10. Hopefully the main game will be good, but I think it's a 4 for me, definitely. Maybe a 5 if if the MMO stuff is a little bit more interesting, and maybe if what I presume are going to be huge microtransactions in these games, in this game in particular, is going to not be a plus in my book. I feel like the developers are using microtransactions more and more to just basically milk the audience, which are nickel and dime you, which I really don't like either. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick at a 4 for now, and then when the main game comes out, I'll probably do like a little short review on that as well. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, take care everybody. be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Catch you later, dudes. Bye.